to introduce you to my friend Sheldon. Sheldon is a hermit crab, and he lives in the comfort of his little shell where he does things that are comfortable and safe. Well, one morning, Sheldon woke up with a problem, and his problem was something that happens to every hermit crab. His shell started getting too small for his body. It got all tight and squishy. And so he had to do something he didn't want to do. He had to go outside of that comfortable little home and go out into the great blue ocean where things were unknown and scary. Sheldon had quite the problem, but we actually have that same problem too in a lot of ways. We're afraid to go outside of our little zone of comfort, our little zone of safety. My name is Sailor Terrell, and I have studied the impact that fear can play in people's lives. I have also personally experienced how fear can hold you back from things in my own life. Well, Sheldon was off. He was going. He had to get his 2 feet out the door, and he started swimming on this great adventure. And everywhere he went, he was jumpy and jittery. He was so afraid because it was scary. We have often felt the same feelings as Sheldon when we do things that we don't like to do, when we do things that are outside of our comfort zone. And often because of those feelings, we don't want to go outside of our comfort zone, so we stay there. Cision, which is a public relations company, posted an article on June 27, 2013 that gave a crazy statistic. They said that 84% of people hold on to an irrational fear. That's not even a rational fear. That's an irrational fear. It's something you don't have to be afraid of, but you're still afraid of it. So in this aspect, we're talking about the fear of uncertainty. That's irrational because you're afraid of something you don't even know. Why would you fear something that you know nothing about? Why would you fear something that you don't even know if you need to be afraid of it? You don't even know if it causes worry because you don't know about it. It's uncertain. Yet, 84% of people hold on to that fear. Going off of that, Zen Habits, which is an online health blog, posted an article by Leo Babota that explains how the problem is when we're running from discomfort all the time because we're afraid of it. So when we're running away from that discomfort, our comfort zone and our living space gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just this little spot. This is where you can do your life. There out there in the world is the big, huge, wide world, but you stay here in your little square because you're afraid of going out there, because you ran from everything else, that you have this tiny space of comfort that you can live in. And that's it. You live here and there's so much big, wide world out there. That is horrible. Well, Dave Asprey really pinpoints the real problem here, living inside this tiny comfort zone. He said in his blog, the Dave Asprey blog, that when you do the same thing over and over and over again, you really stop your growth. So when you do the same thing over and over again, when you do the same thing in this tiny little hole, you stay in that comfort zone, your growth becomes stagnant, you stop growing. But in order to truly live, you need to be growing, you need to have that growth to experience new things and actually live a meaningful life. But when you're in your comfort zone, you're not pushing yourself, you're stuck and you're stagnant. And it's a horrible problem that many Americans have, more than 84%, because a lot of the other things are other people with other fears that hold them back from this as well. So many people have that problem. Well, Sheldon had that problem too, and he was afraid to go out. But after he got his 2 feet out the door, he realized something. He realized that the adventure was actually kind of thrilling. Sheldon liked to have the uncertainty a little bit. Yes, it was scary at first, but once he got through that initial step, he kind of liked it. It was exciting and fulfilling. We can feel the same way about it, but we have to do exactly what Sheldon did. We have to put our 2 feet out the door first before we can do anything. We have to take that first step. The Human Systems Dynamic Institute, which is a nonprofit health organization, posted an article on July 2015 by Royce Holiday that explains how we become paralyzed, we become like stopped, stagnant, when we have this idea that we need to know everything that's out there. We have the idea that we need to know everything, so that nothing's uncertain, so we're not afraid of this uncertainty at all, because we know it all. But then she goes on to say that there's no way that you can know everything. It's impossible to know everything, so uncertainty is inevitable. It's gonna be there. No matter who you are or where you are, uncertainty is a fact of life. So once you brace that fact and can move forward from that, knowing that you're not gonna know everything, you can take that step, say, okay, you're not gonna know anything. going off of that, Pearson, which is a student education website, posted an article that explains how the most meaningful things happen outside of your comfort zone. The things that make life most meaningful are not in your comfort zone. When you're in your comfort zone, you miss out on the things that make life worth living. So go out of your comfort zone, take a step out of this circle and experience life, experience the opportunities and the people and the experiences that are waiting for you outside of your comfort zone, because they're not going to be in that little circle. You have to take that step out and your life will become so much more meaningful, because the most meaningful things happen outside of that square. Then, expanding even more, Forbes, which is an online business magazine, posted an article on April 11th, 2018 that kind of points the process. It says, milestone leads to milestone, which leads to milestone. So milestone after milestone, you're growing. When you take that step, it'll lead to another step and another step. And your little tiny square of comfort will get bigger and bigger and bigger until you can do even more things that you never imagined you were doing. Things that will make your life so much more meaningful. Because when you're in here, there's so much you're missing out on. So then you may ask, well, if you're happy in your comfort zone, why would you risk your happiness to go outside of your comfort zone into something you don't know about, something that might be scary, something that might have risks? Well, here's the thing. In here, you don't even know. You don't know what's out there waiting for you. So why don't you just see? Yeah, it might be risky, but in here, your life isn't going to be meaningful. There's people out there. There's opportunities that you're missing on, impacts that you can make in the world that you're missing because you're stuck in your comfort zone. When out there, really, that's where the happiness is. That's when your life is going to be most meaningful, because you're living a life of satisfaction. But in here, you're just living a life of comfort. You may feel comfortable, but you can't be truly satisfied. But going off of that, riskiness always entails one thing: failure. And failure is not exactly something people are excited about. Failure is something people fear, something that's scary, because it makes them vulnerable. But is failure really that bad? Is it really that horrible as we say it is? That's how we imagine it is in our brain. Well, Bob Goff, who is a best-selling author, wrote a book called Love Does. And in that book, he told a story about a man who loved to fail. Now, this man was a chemist, and he was working for Starbucks. And he was making Starbucks a new, freezer-dried coffee mix that they were going to have in their store. And he poured his heart and his energy and his soul and his passion into this. And he worked on it, and he presented it to the people at Starbucks. And they hated it, and they threw it out, and they said, no, that's disgusting. And so what most of us would do would be taking that failure and just plummet down and fall back into your tiny little comfort zone and choose to never go outside again. But instead, this man took that failure and said, okay. And he took it, and he learned from it, and he went from it, and he ran with that failure and said, yes, I failed, but I'm going to learn from it. And he poured in more passion and more energy and took the lesson he learned, and he made a new coffee mix, and he presented it to them, and now Starbucks has that coffee in their store. So rather than taking that failure and just falling down to the pits, he took it and embraced the failure. That's what we need to do. Embrace the failure, learn from it, and thrive from it, because failure is all part of the process. If you're going to live a meaningful life, you have to fail. Because from that failure, you grow so much. And growth is so incredibly important. That's how you truly live, when you grow. Well, Sheldon had that same experience. He was excited about life because he was living a meaningful life outside of his comfort zone. And a couple times he did fail. One time he put a shell on it, it was too big. He put another shell on it, it was too small. But he took those and said, okay, I need a different shell. And he learned from them, he grew from them. And he realized that this life was so exciting, it was so meaningful and fulfilling. We can live that exact same life as Sheldon, but in a human aspect. When you live a life that is meaningful outside of your comfort zone, you're stretched and you grow. My friend Savannah once told me a phrase, and something that I actually just said. It's 3 words: it's stretch and grow. And that is the process. It's so simple to say, but it's hard to do. You stretch and you grow. That's it. When you stretch yourself, it's so scary because you go outside of your comfort zone. You do something that makes you uncomfortable and is a little bit scary and makes you vulnerable for failure. But when you do that, so much growth can happen, and when that you grow, and when you have that process of growth, that's when you live the most meaningful life. Like I already talked about, the most meaningful things happen outside of your comfort zone. So that growth process is what gives you the most meaningful life. And when you do that, it's not going to happen. You're not going to grow in this comfort zone because that is what you're comfortable with. You have to go outside of that in order if you're going to grow. But if you choose not to, if you choose to stay in this little comfort zone, then your life is going to look much different because you're going to be stuck there. You're not going to grow. You're going to be stagnant. And your life is not going to change. It's not going to be different. It's going to be there. And you might be comfortable, but you'll be missing out on so much excitement. You'll watch opportunities and people go by wasted because you chose to stay inside of your comfort zone. Well, Sheldon had no choice. He had to go outside of his shell. He was forced to because it was too small. You, on the other hand, do have a choice. And this choice is hard to make. You can choose to stay in your comfort zone where you'll be safe. Or you can choose to live a meaningful life outside of your comfort zone in the great wide world. And you can do that by taking a couple easy steps. The first step you can do is by Success, which is an online magazine. And they said you can do that by just simply saying yes. Say yes. Say yes to going on that date. Say yes to taking that trip. Say yes to taking the job. And your life could take you different places. Switch the no to a yes, and your life can change drastically. Another super easy thing you can do is just by switching up the norm. Change your music that you're listening to. Change your drive to work. Little changes will take that first milestone, which will build and build and build, and your comfort zone will expand, and you'll be able to live a meaningful life. I'm going to leave you with one last thing. It's my favorite saying. It says, get uncomfy. Get uncomfortable. That's what I'm challenging you to do. Get uncomfortable. Let yourself take the risk. Become vulnerable. Embrace the failure and live a life that's meaningful and a life that's fulfilling because you're not in this little circle, because you're out there in the world, outside of your comfort zone, stretching yourself and growing.